Alright, we are back with a new video, and today we will once again be updating the Big Brother Canada 10 power rankings following the triple eviction. And believe it or not, we're actually getting very close to the end of the season as well. I believe the finale is going to be next week, and obviously we're about to have the eviction on Thursday. That'll bring us down to 4, probably squeeze in another round between then, and before we know it, we'll be at the finale. So and that makes things interesting in terms of the schedule for making videos for this series moving forward, as I know that I want to at least make one more video before the finale comes out. Ideally, it'd be another power ranking as well as a jury scenarios video, kind of similar to what I did for Australian Survivor when that was wrapping up. But I guess we're going to have to play it by ear. I haven't fully committed to what I want to do for that last video yet before the finale. But I will assure you that after the season ends, there will be a review and a player ranking, so stay tuned for that. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. So starting off the list at number 8, we have the first of the 3 people that were evicted during the triple. And here we have GINO. And it didn't surprise me too much that GINO was evicted here. Obviously, with him being backdoored due to, well, you know what happened at this point. Like it was no surprise, and really was a no-brainer for him to be evicted, as it really made no sense for them to go into what they probably expected was going to be like a special event. A lot of people suspected that a triple or at least a double was going to be coming up, and it made no sense for GINO to be kept around, especially with JC also around, with GINO being perceived as being pretty good physically, but also has demonstrated himself to be pretty good at mental comp as well. It just made no sense for anyone to keep GINO in the game other than JC Lin, so it's not too surprising he was evicted here. And in terms of his overall game, like it's sort of a weird situation where on one hand, I felt like he was pretty well positioned for a lot of it. I mean, a lot of the reason I had him so high on my rankings early in the season was because of how strong his position was, with him being aligned with Kyle as well as Marty, and it was in good with a lot of the house, really. However, I think as time went on, it was pretty evident that he was a pretty passive player. I don't think he handles either of his HOHs particularly well, where obviously in the first one, he backdoored Kyle, thinking that getting rid of Kyle, who was a consensus house target at that point, would have really helped him out, when really all it did was do him no favors moving forward. Like, I mean, it's never a good idea to get rid of your own ally, thinking that it will get you in with anyone else. And his second HOH wasn't too much better, where he wanted to backdoor Marty, only for the veto to not be used due to Helena going up. And as a result, he was forced to send out Moose, which was not ideal for his game either. So really neither of his HOHs did particularly well. And even then, I felt like he didn't do that much work to actively play the game that well. Now, mind you, I think he did some good work, at least in the mid game, with trying to get in good with Kevin and Helena, but it was pretty evident by the end that they weren't willing to go to the end with them, as obviously him and JC Lin were going to be big threats moving forward. So obviously it made sense for them to be broken up at the final 8. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's not a great game, but I do understand how he got as far as he did. So because of that, I'm here at number 8. Now we're moving on to number 7, and we have one of the 2 people that were evicted after GINO went out in the triple, and here we have Summer. Now again, you could interchange her with the number 6 person. It really doesn't matter. They were evicted at the same time. They were both put up on the block at the same time. I guess the main reason I have Summer a bit lower is because she was slightly lower on last week's power ranking, so that explains that. But again, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, it's sort of surprising that she went up during the triple. I mean, partially because of Josh winning HOH and her getting very upset with Josh after he put her up, but I think it was largely because of his own loyalty to Kevin and Helena. He refused to put them up, which obviously left Summer as one of the few remaining options. And even outside that, I feel like she got very lucky last week, where she would have been a backup target had she not won safety from Canada. So even then, like, it's not that impressive that she even got to the triple eviction. But on the whole, I mean, I felt like she played an okay game where, again, she spent a lot of it playing under the radar, really doing her best to not expose her loyalties too much, and people generally trusting her. However, I think as time went on, her position really got exposed and blown up, particularly with her sending her Mon out the door. That wasn't a great round for her. Later on, the Moose situation was also pretty bad, as again, Marty was supposed to be the consensus target, but with Moose being stuck on the block with Betty, like Summer was kind of forced to show her hand there. That's not great. And she didn't really have much runway left by the time of her boot. So it would have been hard for her to get towards the end unless she won out in comps, which considering she never won a comp, I mean, that's sort of hard to really see that playing out. But again, it's not too surprising she went out here in the triple, especially with Josh being HOH. But again, she at least got to the triple eviction. So because of that, I have her here at number 7. Now we're moving on to number 6, and we have the other boot from the triple eviction. And here we have Marty. And I feel like Marty was the clear target coming into the triple. I mean, he really needed to win that veto, considering he wasn't eligible to play in the HOH there. And obviously, when he failed to do so, he was obviously voted out as a result. And on the whole, Marty did not play that great of a game. I mean, all three of his HOHs really were not that particularly great, with the last one being particularly something, with him literally putting GINO up on the block through gummy bears, like literally the one person that he wanted to avenge, considering everything that happened beforehand, only for that person to be sent out the door on his watch, and then immediately being sent out immediately afterwards. Again, he was a pretty big mess strategically. I mean, he never really had that strong of a grasp on what moves to make. But to his credit, he was able to get into the majority at one point. He was able to build certain allies, particularly with the Kyle and GINO side early on. Later on, is able to build a bond with Helena that proves very critical in the Moose week, where he was supposed to be the backdoor target, but with Helena winning HOH, being close to him, and not like being in her best interest to get rid of Marty at that point, she decides to save Marty by not using the veto. You have to give him some credit for having that relationship with Helena, but at the end of the day, it's still not a great game at the end of the day. So because of that, I'm here at number 6. And with that, we are now moving to the 5 players still in the game. And as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely it is that they'll win the game from this point. And this is very interesting. Normally on Big Brother seasons, like Final 5, Final 4 is usually when the game starts to slow down a bit, as it's really getting down to the numbers. Usually there'll be a clear target coming into Final 5, Final 4, and usually the competitions will dictate everything more or less. But this season is particularly interesting, as even though we already had the veto competition, like it's still not entirely clear who's going to go home, as obviously it's down between Josh and JC Lynn, and the two people voting in this situation, Kevin and Helena, have been going back and forth over and over again on who to evict, which makes this very hard to assess in terms of who's going to go home during this week. But I'm going to do my best to figure this out. So now we get onto the list. And at number 5, the person I think is the least likely to win this season is Josh. And again, I feel like Josh, before last week's triple eviction, was in a somewhat decent position. I mean, he was someone who had a good shot at getting to the end with Kevin and Helena, but also had a decent relationship with Betty. But then he wins HOH during the triple, and through him remaining loyal to Kevin and Helena, completely burns his relationships with both Summer and Betty by putting them on the block. Now, obviously, the Summer situation was pretty bad on his end, and it's pretty unlikely that he'll get her jury vote, even if he gets to the end at this point. And now with Betty, obviously, the big reason Betty put him up is because of what he did during the triple eviction by putting her up after JC Lynn won the veto. So that's not particularly great. I mean, he's in a lot of hot water right now. And now Kevin and Helena are left wondering what to do. And we've seen them really consider evicting Josh, like not only because he seems more likely to not take them to the end, but also due to him being a comp threat, where obviously a lot of people talk about JC Lynn like having a lot of potential to win out at this point. However, Josh is also a very capable comp beast. Like as we've seen him win both mental comps and physical comps, that's weighing on their minds a lot. And obviously, if by Thursday night they decide that it's more of a gamble to take JC Lynn along, then obviously Josh is in a bad position. But even if he survives, I mean, Josh is still not in a great position moving forward. Like, he'll still need to win out. And even then, like, it's unclear whether he'll actually win a jury vote at the end. I mean, he'll possibly win against Helena or Betty. Like, I would need to really go through the jury votes there, but it's not looking great for Josh at the end of the day. And because of that, I'm here at number 5. Now we're moving on to number 4, and we have the other person on the block right now. And here we have JC Lynn. And again, JC Lynn's in a lot of danger. I mean, obviously, coming into the week, I would have assumed that she was the clear-cut target, as she was the only person that wasn't going to take Kevin to the end. But with Josh, like, being on Betty's bad side, with Kevin figuring out that Josh is no longer entirely loyal to him and Helena, and with Kevin just emerging as a bigger jury threat, like, that's no longer entirely clear whether JC Lynn will be the boot. Now, as of recording this, I think they are leaning on evicting JC Lynn, to be perfectly honest. Although, given how much they've gone back and forth, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if another flip were to happen between this recording and when the actual eviction happens on Thursday night. But the main reason I have JC above Josh is I have more confidence in her not only getting to the end, but winning a jury vote if she is to survive this week. As, again, I feel like similar to Josh, she would need to win out even if she survives this week. And I think she has a decent amount of ability to do so. Obviously, it's not a guarantee, but I think it is a possibility. But if she does get to the end, I feel like she's more likely to win a jury vote than Josh is if he were to get to the end, as obviously she would have GINO in the jury. Plus, I think she would get the respect of Herman and Moose for having had to win a bunch of competitions. So I think those are all things that could play into her favor. Plus, she can sell herself as an underdog at the end of the game. So I think there's plenty of stuff going in JC Lynn's corner. It's just a matter of if she can get there. But obviously, she's in a pretty bad spot. She is on the block. She has the potential to go home this week. And even beyond that, like, she would need to win out in order to get to the end. But I feel like I have slightly more confidence in JC Lynn to win the game from this point than Josh. So because of that, I have her here at number 4. Now I'm moving on to number 3. And again, this person was also number 3 last week. And here we have Helena. And again, I feel like I have a lot of confidence in Helena to get to the end of the game. I feel like of this final 5, Helena is the most likely person I can see being in the final 2. It's just a matter of if she can win the jury vote. And to be honest, I feel like she probably has the least amount of chance of winning the jury vote, if I'm being perfectly honest, as we'll talk about Betty in a moment. However, I feel like Helena definitely isn't in the best spot. She definitely has not garnered the most respect from the jury at this point. And she definitely has the potential to do so this week by evicting Josh. I feel like if she evicts Josh, then she can claim that as a move on her resume. And if she's able to win some comps towards the end and make some crucial decisions, maybe get to the end with JC Lynn, or maybe get to the end with Betty, I feel like she has a shot. However, she's definitely going to lose to Kevin if she gets to the end. That's not particularly great. And in general, I feel like she'll really need to work in order to get towards the end. She has an opportunity this week to make a move that could impress the jury, but I think she'll also need to win some more comps along the way, especially with, again, JC Lynn and Betty having won a decent amount at this point. So again, she'll definitely need to do some work, but I have the most confidence in her getting to the final 2, given her current game position. So because of that, I have her here at number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and I can't believe I have this person as number 2 right now, but given everything that's happening, I mean, I feel like this person could win. But at number 2, we have Betty, the current HOH, and yeah, she won HOH. I mean, that's now her second comp win. She won a veto before the triple, and she won an HOH now. And she is starting to pick up on what's happening in the game. She recognizes that Kevin is the biggest threat, and she no longer wants to take Kevin to the end. And obviously, with her like trying to get out Josh at this point, I feel like that is something in her favor at least. Now, admittedly, I feel like Betty's jury chances are still a bit wonky. Like, she, again, might need to win some more comps along the way. She might need to do more to distinguish herself from the rest of this final 5. But I feel like the main reason I have her this high at this point is because of her comp wins so far. I feel like people like Herman and Moose are really going to value like comp wins at the end of the day. Obviously, we saw Herman very much criticize people like Summer for throwing comps, and considering that, obviously that's going to play a factor in this end game. And I feel like with Betty now having won some cons, I feel like they may start to pay attention to her more. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Betty gets to the end game. But I feel like at this point, she'll also need to win out to a degree, as Kevin and Helene are definitely on her at this point. I feel like Kevin in particular is keen on getting her out of Final Four if she's vulnerable, as he recognizes that Betty would probably vote him out at Final Four if she won veto. So again, it's a very precarious spot for her, but really it's a precarious spot for anyone, where I feel like aside from Helena, I don't think anyone's necessarily guaranteed Final Two, but I feel like Betty is someone who definitely has some room to maneuver. So because of that, I have her here number 2. And now at number 1, the person I think is the most likely to win Big Brother Candidate 10 right now is Kevin. And before Thursday, really, I feel like if we had just heard these comp results of Betty winning HOH and JC not winning the veto, I feel like Kevin would have been guaranteed Final Two at this point, as everyone left in the game except for JC Lynn was going to take him to the end. However, things started to unravel a bit once it became clear to Betty that Kevin isn't committed to her, once it became apparent to Josh that Kevin doesn't have much of an interest in taking him to the end. And I feel like now Kevin's definitely in a worse spot than he was before Thursday or even Friday morning. But I still feel like I have a lot of confidence in Kevin to maneuver through this endgame. Like, he's definitely the best player of the people remaining in the game at this point. He definitely was in some danger this week if Josh won the veto and Betty had to put him up. I mean, there's definitely a chance that he's in that position now instead of Josh. So that's not particularly great. And obviously now he's in that swing vote position with Helena. And he keeps going back and forth on what to do. He recognizes there are merits to, keeping Josh or keeping JC Lynn, even though JC Lynn is not someone committed to taking him to the end. So again, there's definitely a lot of uncertainty right now over whether he can get to the end. I feel like Final Four will be a pretty big danger spot for him, especially if Betty wins the veto and he doesn't win HOH or some sort of safety. So he definitely needs to step up his comps in terms of that. However, if he gets to the end, he wins the game. I mean, I feel like given the fact that the jury is starting to pick up on his game now, he definitely has a lot more respect, and he would probably win if he gets to the end, really against anyone. He just needs to get there, and again, there are definitely ways for him to do that. I mean, he still has Helena on his side. I feel like Betty is someone he could potentially get back into his corner. And again, as long as JC Lynn doesn't win safety, like, they could vote her out at 4. So there's definitely ways for Kevin to get to the end from this point. He just needs to take advantage of them. And because of that, I feel like Kevin is here at number 1. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And like I said, I mean, this season does wrap up next week, so I will be doing postseason coverage for that with a review and a player ranking for that, so stay tuned for that. Moving forward, I'm still covering Survivor 42 as usual. I do have some videos planned, talking more generally about Survivor. Like, I think they'll be coming out soon, but or at least I'll start releasing some of them soon, but that should be interesting. And also The Circle is starting relatively soon. That's a series I want to cover on this channel, so stay tuned for that as well. But for now, that is the video. See ya.